There's something I still can't fully explain, even now. You'd be out there playing Milos, and everything felt fine. Your shots were landing, your movement was good, you were doing everything right. And then you'd look up at the scoreboard and realize you were losing. Not just losing, getting beaten quite comfortably. That was the strangest part. You never felt like you were controlling the match. It felt like you were doing everything you could, and it was still all up to him. He wasn't hitting winners past you every point. He wasn't serving you off the court. He was just there, moving like a cat, returning everything, redirecting the ball to places you hadn't even considered, and somehow the match was already slipping away. I think that's what made Milos genuinely terrifying. Not the power, not the speed you could see. It was the feeling that no matter what you did, he had already decided how this was going to end.
I'll tell you exactly what happened at the US Open in '86. I walked onto that court feeling good. I had my serve, I had my game, I had just won Wimbledon for the second time that summer. And Milos, he looked like he'd rather be somewhere else entirely. That beard, that lazy walk, those sleepy eyes, I thought, this is going to be fine. It was not fine. He handled my serve like it was nothing. Not by hitting it hard back that I could respect, that I understood. He just redirected it. Took the pace away, moved me left, moved me right, put the ball exactly where I couldn't reach it. Every weapon I had, he neutralized. Not with power, with patience and angles I didn't even see coming. By the third set, I had no idea what to do. And that almost never happened to me. You must play a tactical game against him. If you just play tennis, normal tennis, you lose. Simple as that.
People always want to talk about how terrifying Milos was. Fine. I'll give you a different angle. I beat him. World Team Cup, '85. He was up 5-1 in the deciding set. 5-1 against me. Most players in that position, you start thinking about your acceptance speech. Match over, right? Wrong. Something happened to him. I don't know what it was, nerves, the moment, whatever. He just stopped being able to serve. And I mean that literally. He couldn't get the ball over the net on a normal serve. Eventually he was hitting underhand just to keep the point going. I won that match. But here's the thing, and this is what people miss. That wasn't the real Milos. I knew it. Everyone on tour knew it, because the same guy who fell apart against me was out there dismantling Lendl, taking apart Becker, destroying the Swedes week after week. That's what made him so dangerous. You never knew which Milos was showing up.
As a serve and volleyer, you rely on one thing above everything else, the opponent not knowing where your serve is going. That's your first strike. That's how you control the point before it even starts. Milos took that away. I don't know how he read serves the way he did. You'd hit what you thought was a good ball wide to the backhand, deep into the body, and he was already there, not scrambling, already there. And then he would redirect the ball to the open court at an angle you simply hadn't covered. Not hard, just perfectly timed. I remember a match we played before Wimbledon in '88, Davis Cup rubber in Sweden. I was down 4-1 in the fifth set. Most players in that position, you find a way to close it out. Against Milos, even leading, you never felt safe. I managed to turn it around that day, but I carried that match with me all the way to Wimbledon. It taught me something important. Against him, you cannot relax. Not for one game, not for one point.
Look, I've played against every kind of player you can imagine. Guys who try to get in your head, guys who scream, guys who stall, guys who do everything they can to throw you off. I know all those tricks. I invented some of them. Milos did none of that. And somehow that was worse. Dallas, '87, the WCT finals. I lost the first set badly. I mean, badly. I got frustrated. Okay, I got more than frustrated. I said some things. There was a fine involved. The crowd was going crazy. And Milos, he walked to the baseline, bounced the ball a couple of times, and waited. That was it. No reaction, nothing. Like I was a minor inconvenience between him and whatever fish he was planning to catch that weekend. That's when it hit me. You can't rattle someone who isn't there to be rattled. After the match, someone asked me what I knew about him. I said, and I meant it, the only thing I know about him is that he fishes. That was all I had. That was all any of us had.
Mecíř was a problem, a specific technical problem. And like any problem, it had a solution, but the solution was ugly. He lived on angles. Everything he did was about creating space on the court that shouldn't exist. Wide backhand, sharp forehand, cross court, ball behind you before you could reset. Beautiful to watch, I'm sure. Terrible to play against. So Tony Roche and I sat down before the Australian Open final in '89, and we decided no angles, hit deep, hit down the center, give him nothing to work with, take away the geometry he needed. It worked. I won without losing a set. Then I apologized to the crowd. That's not something I did often, but that day the way I had to play it wasn't tennis anyone wanted to watch. It was a demolition job, efficient, necessary, completely joyless. The fact that beating Mecíř required me to play the ugliest match of my career, that should tell you exactly how dangerous he was. No other opponent forced me to do that, not one.
'88 was supposed to be my year, and honestly, for most of it, it was. I won the Australian Open, the French Open, the US Open, 3 Grand Slams in one calendar year. I was playing the best tennis of my life. Wimbledon was the only one left. And then I ran into Miloš. He didn't just beat me, he made it look easy. I was the #1 player in the world, having arguably the greatest season of my generation, and he took me apart in straight sets like it was a Tuesday practice session. I just have problems when I see him facing me across the net. That's the only way I can describe it. Something about his game, the angles, the pace changes, that backhand, it just didn't compute for me. People asked Stefan about his Wimbledon title for years afterward. You know what's funny? Nobody ever asked me about that loss. They called Stefan and asked him about his win. More importantly, no one wanted to hear my side of it. He was right to celebrate, but trust me, I remembered it.
Let me tell you about that backhand, the two-handed backhand. In my opinion, and I faced every great player of that era, it was the best in the game. Not the most powerful, the most dangerous. Here is why. When you watch a player shape up to hit, you read the racket face, you read the shoulders, you start moving before the ball is even struck. That's how tennis works at the highest level. Anticipation, commitment. You have to guess early and guess right. With Milos, you couldn't. He held the ball on the strings for just a fraction longer than anyone else. Just long enough that by the time you knew where it was going, your feet had already committed the wrong way. Then the ball was past you. Not by a meter, by a centimeter. That's all he needed. Someone once described playing him as bleeding to death. I couldn't have said it better myself. You don't feel the wound until it's already too late. That backhand was the knife. You just never saw it coming.
Here's what nobody talks about. Every serious player on tour had a coach. You had someone watching your matches, breaking down your opponent, telling you what to expect. That was just how it worked. You prepared. You had a game plan walking out there. Milos had no coach. None. Ever. Now think about what that means for the guy on the other side of the net. Your coach has been watching tape, building a strategy, giving you patterns to exploit. And Milos, he just showed up. No system, no predictable structure anyone could hand you a scouting report on. Every match he played was essentially improvised, pure instinct, pure feel. You can't prepare for improvisation. That's the thing. You prepare for patterns. Milos had no patterns. And then there was that look on his face, that completely unbothered expression, like he was thinking about where he'd go fishing after the match. You're out there fighting for your life, and he looks like he's already somewhere else. That's not accidental. That gets inside your head whether you wanted to or not. I know it got inside mine.
Seoul, 88, I was the Wimbledon champion, top seed. I thought I was ready for anything. In one of the sets that day, I couldn't win a game, not one. Every time I approached the net, the ball was already somewhere I wasn't. He didn't telegraph anything. There was no moment where you could read what was coming. He simply moved and the point was over. But what I remember most isn't the tennis, it's his face. Between points, after winners, after errors, the same expression. Nothing. Completely empty. No celebration, no frustration, no acknowledgement that anything important was happening. Like the match was a minor interruption in his day. That's deeply unsettling when you're on the other side. You want the reaction, you want to know you're affecting him somehow. With Milos, you got nothing. You had no idea what he was thinking, what he was feeling, whether he even cared. I played tennis the simple way, I always said. But against Milos, simple wasn't enough. Nothing felt simple out there.
Here's the thing about Milos that nobody wants to say out loud. He had the game of a #1 player. Genuinely. The touch, the movement, the ability to read a match, all of it. On any given day, he could walk onto a court and beat absolutely anyone in the world. And I mean anyone. But he didn't have the killer instinct. That thing Lendl had, that relentless, almost inhuman drive to close out every tournament, every match, every point. Milos didn't have that. Or maybe he just didn't want it badly enough. Maybe the fish were more interesting. And here's what's crazy. That actually made him more terrifying, not less. If you're playing Lendl, you know what's coming. You know he's going to be at his best in the biggest moments. With Milos, you never knew, was today his day? Was this the match where everything clicked and he became completely unplayable? That uncertainty, that's what kept players up at night. You couldn't game plan for a guy who hadn't decided yet whether he felt like winning.
There is a word people use for players like Mecíř, genius. I don't use it often, but in his case it fits. He walked onto courts with a wooden racket, while everyone else had moved on and still reached Grand Slam finals. He played the tennis of the future with the equipment of the past. That is not something you can teach. That is not something you can practice into existence. You either have it or you don't. What I find most telling is this. After I beat him in Melbourne, I apologized to the crowd, not to Mecíř, to the crowd. Because the way I had to play, the way I had to dismantle everything that made him beautiful just to survive, the people watching deserve better than that. That is his legacy. Not the titles he didn't win, not the ranking he never reached. The fact that beating him required an apology, that tells you everything about Miloslav Mecir.